Dhanishta. Now, Dhanishta takes the energy of Shravana and, well, for lack of a better way to put it, kind of puts it into action. And it's interesting because it's ruled by Mars, right? So after that moon, that reflective nature of the moon, here we have Mars stepping into the equation and going, what am I going to do with this?
Right.
Okay. The Dhanishta is connected with the Vasus, which are referred to as being the gods of light and abundance. But a deeper way of understanding them is they're the personification of cosmic energy, of pure energy, right? They're that form here on planet, right? So they're like light incarnated. Okay? Let's look at some of the other symbols connected with Dhanishta. Dhanishta means simultaneously a drum and a bamboo flute. Now let's, both are musical instruments, obviously. So, but can those instruments do anything on their own? No, all they can be is a flute or a drum. So they need a musician in order to play them. The instruments are merely a link between the musician and the music, right? Through Dhanishta, the soul is getting rid of everything that's considered by the ego to be its own, so that one is able to, for lack of a better way to put it, allow the music of the cosmos to be played through one, to allow the divine music to be played through one. The type of drum that is connected with Dhanishta is a mridanga, which if you see pictures of Shiva, he's always pictured playing a mridanga, obviously. And it's a two-sided drum with a pellet that strikes either side of the drum. Those two sides represent the bipolarity of human personality. What do I mean by that? Well, you know, here we are as a human, we have an ego, and one part of us is also divine. Okay? So Shiva strikes both sides of this drum alternately and rhythmically with the intent of destroying the ego. So he acts through us, creates these experiences in our life so that our ego can be destroyed. Similarly, the flute is also played by Krishna. When Krishna plays his flute, well, the devotees let go of their consciousness of self and want to become completely immersed in Krishna. What happens with Dhanishta is self-consciousness begins to become negated. Ultimately, that's what we want to happen through that. That's the positive side of Dhanishta. Even what one would initially consider to be prudent or wise is no longer looked at from the perspective of going, oh, I think that this is a good practical step to take. With Dhanishta energy, the actions that are undertaken can be very impractical because they're not being looked at from the intellect, in terms of the intellect going, this is a good thing to do. Instead, it's from a higher perspective of right judgment. What does the universe want me to do? Even though I may not think that it's wise. What is the right thing to do?
So is that related possibly, I mean, when we think about the ruling planet being Mars, and when we have a well-supported Mars, Mars acts on instinct.
Very good, yes.
Would it be like a cosmic instinct that's coming through here versus having to use Mercury to figure it all out and see if all the pieces are in place, but just to kind of react?
Exactly. And while we're on that subject, I thought being in Aries myself, kind of reflecting on personal experiences that I have had in terms of my own play of consciousness. It's a very difficult energy in terms of that Mars energy, because Mars energy is guided by impulse, just like you were saying, right? When it's working positively, it's going to act on instinct. And that instinct is going to be tuned into what is actually right, what is actually appropriate. But sometimes that Mars will take actions that aren't appropriate because it's being impulsive.
Right.
And a dichotomy that happens, I would imagine, even for Scorpios too, both being ruled by Mars, the dichotomy that happens is this impulse that I'm acting on actually right? Okay, so one can go, well, I want to surrender and do what's right, but part of one's nature is to act on impulse. So one is meant to act on impulse, and it creates a difficulty. But yes, in terms of what you were speaking about, in terms of acting on instinct, the type of instinct that one would be acting on would be correctly aligned.
Right. Well, I mean,
if it's well supported. If it's not well supported, well, then somebody's kind of marching to the beat of their own drum and taking some inappropriate actions.
Right. Well, in Vasistha Yoga, one of my favorite books, it talks about that the whole point of all of this enlightenment or the search or whatever it might be is to live a natural and spontaneous life contentedly, with the focus on spontaneous. Meaning that kind of once you get in alignment with the path, or once you get in alignment with this higher consciousness or this inner direction that's making everything happen, then when you act, it's not based on, is it because the scripture says so? Is it because my guru said so? Is it because I should do this? It's more just, it's about being in tune with what's going on holistically, collectively, and responding appropriately to the moment, which, when I think about Shravana and then going to Dhanishta, well, if Shravana is about listening, the connection to all things, being able to hear that, then you kind of have all this input coming in, which would be beyond the mind, beyond the intellect, and then you would act just like in the same way that your body knows what it's doing. You can have that same kind of experience. So it seems to me that this process, this path of the nakshatras is leading, kind of explaining this capacity to. Again, when I say act on instinct, I don't mean like an animal. I mean just being instinctually knowing what the rest of the cosmos is up to and responding appropriately. And you need that after you've kind of gone through the work of Shravana, which is the capacity to hear and see the connection to all things, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm glad you touched on the whole thing that when you say instinct, you don't mean animal impulse.
Right.
But, even on a certain level, animals know what they're supposed to do. Birds naturally know when it's time to fly south. Right. And they don't go, should I fly south now? Or shall I stay here? They just do what they're meant to do.
Mm-hmm. That's what we're meant to do.
Exactly. But we have this dichotomy where we're given this mind where we can judge our actions. And that's why I wanted to throw the bit in there about without doing what's prudent, without doing what the intellect might be suggesting. Instead, it's about doing what's actually right. Right. Just like you said, without even thinking about it. Mm-hmm. It's interesting. I wanted to touch on the fact that let's look at the Shakti of Dhanishta and the primary motivation side by side. Because the Shakti of Dhanishta is the power to give abundance and fame. So that's going to sound very materialistic. Mm-hmm. But I think if that were changed to the power to give prosperity, I think people might think of that differently. Mm-hmm. But it says power to give abundance and fame, and there's some meaning in that, right? The abundance, well, one has an abundance of what is right for one's life when one is on that path, when one follows one's own dharma. Okay, its primary motivation is dharma. Right. Fame. Well, we're not talking about necessarily fame and fortune, but we're not negating that. But what we're talking about is honor. The fact that one is doing what's right. Mm-hmm. The highest level of fame, not fame in a purely materialistic level. Right. Yeah. So I think a better way to word that would have been prosperity, the power to give prosperity. Mm-hmm. The basis above is birth. So the heavens give us a birth. The basis below here on the planet is prosperity. And I always like that analogy. So through the very fact that we're born, we're prosperous. It's about recognizing that even those challenges that you face, even the difficulties that you go through, even those things that you don't want in your life, that too is prosperity.
Right.
The more you begin to understand that, then the less you, well, have such a hard time. It's probably the easiest way to put it, right? You still experience the difficulty, you still experience the challenges, but you have the right understanding and recognition that, well, this is for a reason.
Right.
Yeah. The result is bringing people together. So what's that all about? Well, each person is on their particular path. They prosper along their own path. They interact with each other. They go through these experiences of weaving together a web here within consciousness. If we look at the fact, Mars is this planet, so it's the action, it's the actual flowing, the coming together.
Right.
Yeah, of things. Yeah. The Trimurti association is Vishnu, the preserver, that which pervades all. So just coming here, not judging who you are, just allowing that cosmic impulse to flow through you, to just be who you are, to be what you are in order to play your part, which Vishnu would be guiding you to do. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Interestingly enough, I found the association with the drum I have found to bear itself out. I've encountered a lot of drummers who have a prominent planet, either a career planet or some other planet somewhere in Dhanishta.
Right.
Or musicians. It's a good musician placement.
Yeah, I've seen that too. And when I thought about it, when you mentioned the drummer, I was thinking about drummers and good drummers. And good drummers, they're not sitting there thinking the whole time, oh, I should play this fill or this role. It's that they are in the groove.
Exactly.
and then from that, something. What makes them decide to hit that drum rather than this drum? What makes them decide to do this particular pattern of drums right there at that point in the song, and it's perfect? What makes that happen? It's this instinct, this capacity to be in tune with hearing with what's going on and then letting it flow through. And it's the same with any musician, right? The musicians who are playing really well, they're not up there. I'm thinking about the other night, personally, I was at band practice and we got in such a groove, and all of a sudden I started playing and I wasn't thinking about what I was doing, but it just came out. And when I looked around, everyone's looking at me like, well, how'd you do that? Do that again. And I thought to myself, I don't think I could do that again.
Right, exactly.
But it's that instinct that just comes out. And the thing is, though, when we think about musicians, that's a good example. We're getting into the tail end of the nakshatras, the lunar zodiac. And it's the same thing with musicians in that when they get, as they work through and start learning and putting together these different aspects of music, in the same way that as we go through the path of the nakshatras and learn and grow, we get to a point where the things, and so you can just let it come out. You don't have to sit there and think about it all the time, right? And I think that's true for music. I think that's true for life. I think that's true for all kinds of things, as long as we are able to consciously pay attention from the beginning. Then as we get older and as we get more mature and as we get more involved in whatever path we're in, we can tap more into this power of Dhanishta, which is staying in tune after you've had the capacity to listen and hear what's going on around you. It's an interesting thought.
Let's talk about an astrologer. I haven't seen a chart like this, but let's talk about an astrologer who would have Mercury in Dhanishta.
Okay.
Because I know that we were talking earlier on in our talks about nakshatras about how on one level, in looking at a chart, sure, techniques are good, but if you get so lost in the analytical side of it, sometimes you miss something that's right there.
Right.
So you learn those techniques so that you're able to, much like we were saying with music, so that you're able to just do them naturally. Mm-hmm. And it just flows through you, and you naturally go to the right thing, and you naturally go, well, I naturally use this technique, but you're not thinking about it. You're just going, well, I'm going to do this now, I'm going to do that now, I'm going to pull this out, and I'm going to pull that out. Here it is.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense.
I think if an astrologer had Mercury and Dhanishta, it would make for a really good astrologer.
Well, maybe Martin Luther King would have been a really good astrologer. Looks like his Mercury is in Dhanishta.
Is it? I didn't know that. There you go.
I just happened to look over because I pulled up his chart as we were talking, and I saw that.
Well, that actually says a lot, because he probably didn't necessarily think
Right.
a lot about what he was saying.
Right.
He just let it be said.
Right. Yes.
And that's the difference. Yeah.
Well, now you've got me curious. Now I want to go through my database and see if I can find an astrologer with Mercury and Dhanishta. But I'll let you know if I find one.
That would be good. Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay.
Did we do everything with Dhanishta?
Did we do the gunas? I don't remember that.
We didn't. Thank you for reminding me.
Okay.
So Sattvic at its basis. So you have to be tuned in to that impulse. You have to be tuned into that level of awareness. You have to be tuned into what's meant to flow through you. But then once you are aware of that, then you're tamasic and tamasic. You're very firm in allowing that process to happen. Mm-hmm. Or you can look at it in terms of manifesting that sattvic energy. You need the tamasic energy in order to manifest that sattvic energy. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense.
Probably the easiest way to understand that.
Yeah, good. Okay.
So I think we're on next to Shatabisha.